Thank you for that.
I ask for permission from the elders to speak. Omituwa wa Africa. Gugemo Ibero Bioma. The spirit of Africa is one spirit. Omituwa wa Africa. No mituwa gongwe. Long live the spirit of Africa. Today was a very emotional day. To go to the traditional African burial ground and see where our ancestors were buried. But one thing came to my mind in the construction of a new building, how the voice of my sisters and brothers said no.
Yes.
They said no.
That's right.
You must recognize
Beautiful.
our ancestors. And truly today, we are standing on the shoulders of our ancestors.
Literally.
I hear the voice of my ancestors saying, my daughters and my sons that are scattered around the world, I want you to be reunited with my sons and daughters that was left on the continent. Because for all of my children, the only way that Africa can come into a new glory, because Africa had an old glory, and we know that old glory, but there's a new glory for Africa to come, and it is us, each one of us in this room, that was born in the diaspora, that was born on the continent. We must come together as one and do what our ancestors have commanded us to do, to love one another. And when we come together as hearing the voice of the ancestors, not only hearing that voice, but being put into action, into motion, to make a new life for the African. We talked about Wakanda. Wakanda is a prototype. It is an inspirational prototype for us to grab hold to on what we can do, a vision that we can have for ourselves. Wakanda is all of Africa. Wakanda is everywhere an African dwells in the earth. It can be the Africa that we so desire it to be. That success of the movie was to make us think forward. It was to make us think, what can we do to have that type of life? Because Africa once had an old glory, but now we're coming into a new glory, which is part of that African Renaissance. As I have traveled around the world, I have found that it is in the diaspora that many of the cultural mores were embedded in those that was taken away.
That's right.
And because they were taken away, they clung to as much as they could,
One little piece of
because they wanted to remember where they came from. So you see the evidence through the naming of people in Suriname. I heard a conversation earlier today in Colombia. And when you look at the little pieces of nuggets, one community has this nugget, another community has another nugget. But when you pull it all together, you have the fullness of Africa. Africa is the life force of the world. You didn't hear me. Africa is the life force of the world. Okay? Everything that you use, from your cell phone to the tires on your car to the bauxite, the aluminum, every resource comes from Africa that the other world uses to create their wealth and create the life that they want. The gods of Africa created us in their likeness and in their image. And in the ground, they put the gold, the diamonds, and bauxite. And when they say we were created from the earth. We came from those gold. We came from the diamonds. We came from the bauxite. And when we go back into the earth, when we have finished in this body, we go back into the earth. And our work is not finished because we're down there making some new oil. We're down there creating more deposits of gold for the generations to come. We are the life force of the world. It was said earlier that other nations come to Africa and they utilize the manpower. They utilize the resources to create the new world. How much greater if we repossess our land, repossess our African mind, repossess our African God, which is our power. If you did not know, when you are disassociated from your African God and you go, as the Bible say, whoring after foreign gods that don't look like you, you pray in a language that's not your native tongue, so you have to get an interpreter for the God to even hear you. Speak your native tongue and talk to the God in your tongue, because he has the power. But they have separated us from our power and dispossessed us of our land, dispossessed us of our gold, diamonds, bauxite, and oil that's in the ground. Go back to the gods of your land. Go back to the gods of your ancestors. Go back to the gods that speak your language, that created your thick lips and the wide hips. Go back to the gods. And as one, I challenge those that were born on the continent to speak your native language. That when you go into these foreign lands and have your children, you teach your children the language of your ancestors. And in so doing, when you come into someone in the diaspora, speak your native tongue. Because when you speak your native tongue, I and those in the diaspora have an opportunity to hear the voice of the ancestors. It is precious to speak that African tongue. We must have self-love. If we love ourselves, love into ourselves, love on ourselves, it's going to be the guiding point. And it will help us make every decision in our life. Once we love ourselves, we will come into self-identity. When we identify who we are, what we are, and who we belong to, again, it will determine every decision that you make. That decision will be for yourself.
That's right. For sure.
That brings you into self-determination. A determined people. A sovereign people that have a vision for where they are currently and where they they want to take their people in the future. Omitwa wa Africa. Google Mego Ibiru Bayonya. The spirit of Africa is one spirit. Omitwa wa Africa. Momitwa Ngomwe. Long live the spirit of Africa.